Thanks for joining the Wholeness podcast, where we believe as we pursue Jesus Christ, He makes us whole and holy. We're so glad to offer resources as part of this ministry of Pentecostal Publishing House. You can visit pentecostalpublishing.com and use the code TWP10 for 10% off your apostolic resources. Thanks again for tuning in. Welcome back to another episode of the Wholeness podcast. We're so excited today to talk with Ellery Saucer again. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, well, we enjoyed the previous conversation on our physical health. And today we're going to go a little different direction, but a very important direction as well. And that is to talk about our relationships. Because when in the season of emotional health, spiritual health, all of these areas of health, a lot of times my sense is we notice issues of emotional health in our interactions with other people.
Sure.
And so my personal journey has been, it's been in times of interacting with others and in relationship developments that it's what prompts me to look inward.
Absolutely.
So I thought in this season when we're talking about so many different areas of our emotional health, our mental health, all these things, I'm like, it's incomplete if we don't have a conversation about the integration with other people and our relationships. So thanks for taking part.
Absolutely.
Maybe just start us off with this idea of why do relationships matter in our lives?
Yeah. In the way that we were created by a very relational God.
Yeah.
And even the intentionality with creating us was for mutual delight.
Yeah.
That we could delight in Him, but also that He would delight in us.
Yes.
So we were created with this intention, and we really see the impacts of us not having that, especially in our culture today. We are more connected in some ways and so much less connected in other ways. Loneliness in our nation has been named as a national health crisis.
Oh, wow.
And we know that that's not just in North America, but that's probably worldwide as well, where loneliness is kind of this epidemic that we're seeing all kinds of health issues result as a side effect of loneliness. And so we've recognized this even from the medical field, that there's something missing.
Yeah.
There's some reason that we're not receiving these connection points that we need.
Yeah.
And I think this could be beating a dead horse, but a lot of it goes back to social media and
Absolutely.
these fast connections that we're having all day long. It's almost like this fast food of connections. We need some sort of connection. We recognize the need. And so we go to a place where we know we're going to get it. We know we're going to receive it. And it's going to satisfy us in the very short term, but it is not going to nourish us in the way that relationships are meant to nourish us and are designed to nourish us. Yeah. And I think that has implications that go beyond just social media, but even in person now, so much less of our interactions are in person now that sometimes even those can kind of be this lesser than quality where we have a lot of relationships that are not these deep friendships, but that are more acquaintances, which is not a bad thing, but they're just not fulfilling that role of deep relationship. And so, we go do something together that is entertaining for us both, but the purpose may not be connection with each other, or we're at an event side by side, but again, it's not connection with each other. So it can feel like I'm doing all this work for a relationship and I still feel so lonely. Maybe it's not the type of connection that we were really designed to have.
Oh, that's very good. In your previous episode, you talked about food and how the point is for it to nourish us. I've never thought about that. Spending time with other human beings is a good thing, but that's a good point. It's not all equal the way that we spend that time and use that being together. Well, so then I guess that brings up the question, what does a healthy relationship look like?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of concepts out there of kind of this ultimate relationship, right? Like we need this ultimate, like, awesome, and this idea that a relationship has to look an exact way in order for it to be healthy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of the things that we tend to take out when thinking of healthy relationships are actually the things like what you were talking about that like edify us and that push us toward growth and greater understanding and awareness of ourselves, like conflict.
Oh, wait. No, I just want the friendship bracelet stuff. Do not go there.
Happy, everyone is kumbaya and
we always get along and agree on everything, always.
Right. And when we have acquaintances, that's possible.
Yeah.
When we don't have anyone on a deeper level, it's possible to go and, if they don't agree with something, like, it's okay because it's not directed at us. They don't know us enough to call us out on our stuff. So it's possible to live in this conflict-free zone. And I think, there's kind of a colliding of a couple of worlds. There's this greater awareness that relationships should be and can be healthy. Yeah. So there's more conversation around things like boundaries and personhood and what does someone bring to a relationship? What should I be expecting? Expectations, self-awareness, all of these have entered the conversation in a bigger way. But we also live in kind of this cancel culture where we want to label behaviors, and then we want to label people as toxic or good. They're toxic, so I'm going to cut them out.
Yeah.
And there are times that is true, and I don't want to minimize that. There are people where you can't stay in a relationship and sustain your own health.
Sure.
And it gets to that point. But I wonder if sometimes it's easier to label someone as toxic than it is to do the work to stay in relationship with them.
Yeah.
In a healthy relationship, it really doesn't look like everything is all roses all the time, but it looks like this process of two people coming to a mutual trust of each other, a mutual delight in each other. There's something they like about each other.
Yeah.
And they let each other know that's healthy and appropriate in a relationship. And then this healthy conflict, this ability to say like, hey, you're kind of acting differently. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
How are you doing? Because it seems like you've gotten a little off in this one area, or this ability to pull them back to center. That is the beauty of these deep relationships, because you are deeply seen and known, and yet still loved and cared for. And what a picture of God's relationship with us.
That's a good point. We're blessed to attend the same church, and you guys are on the pastoral team. I've heard our senior pastor say about marital relationships that a lot of times he will, in a counseling scenario, do this thing about, do you guys trust each other? Yeah. Because this it feels like somebody's looking for a motive here, and we just need to go back to square one. Are we on each other's team? Are we on each other's side? And I thought that was interesting because, be it, parent, child, friend, coworker or whatever, I think what I'm hearing you say about this idea of a healthy relationship, it's got to start with this baseline of trust that I love you, you love me, care for you, whatever the appropriate language is based on the context. Yes. And that just starting with that part of trust, and maybe then that sets up whatever conflict we deal with. We go back to that starting point to get started. You said conflict, and I just wanted to go hide behind the chair because wait a second,
up a little bit.
Let's do the friendship bracelets, and that's what healthy relationship is. But the reality is that's not life. So maybe delve into a little more detail on this idea of healthy conflict, because that is not a word I expect us to talk about when we're talking about relationships.
Yes.
How can conflict be healthy?
Yeah, obviously there's differing levels of if a conflict is productive or not. Okay. And it can be really unhealthy conflict all the way to this can be really productive for our relationship. But what we see, especially, a lot of the studies on relationships are parent to child. But what we see in those studies is that, a child and a parent going along without any conflict or rupture, maybe we could call it, in the relationship, there are good outcomes, but there are much better outcomes when there are ruptures, and then there's repairs to those ruptures. Okay. And so that in and of itself builds trust. Yeah. We may not agree on everything, but yet we're going to come back and express my intention toward you is good. I want the best for you. I love you. I care for you. And that doesn't go away just because we experienced a conflict. Sure. So that repair after a rupture actually holds so much more potential for the relationship than no rupture at all. Yeah. Because it is also speaking to two parties in a relationship bringing their whole genuine selves. Yeah. When you have two people that are bringing their whole genuine selves, you are not going to agree on everything because it's the nature of we're created as unique individuals. Yeah. But there's so much power in that repair. Mm-hmm. So really, the cornerstone of healthy conflict is that there can be movement toward each other, even in conflict. Yeah. Or after.
Yeah, that makes sense, because we talked in that previous episode about how we're made by God. He doesn't choose to make us all these identical clones. Right. If obviously physically that's not the case, but even obviously in their temperaments, and of course there are all these studies on personalities and all that, and that's not my expertise, and you were able to speak to that. But I'm only bringing that up to say that's true. It's inevitable that at some point there is going to be a disagreement, and we can run from that. But then that's messing with that credibility, because I know, and quite possibly the person knows, I've held back some honesty here and some genuineness. So I guess that's true. At some point we have to acknowledge if we're really going to get to know each other, sooner or later there's going to be a conflict, and really mapping out what that looks like. Yes. So then if we wanted to kind of compare this just to our relationship with God, there are times where God disappoints me. Yeah. There are times where he does something and I don't understand why, but I have this ultimate trust in him. And so whether I get an immediate answer, or whether years later, or whether there's some things I may never understand until eternity, but we're back to that underlying trust that I have in him. I'm committed to say, even when you do things that disappoint me or I don't understand, I'm still committed to knowing you and us spending time together. And so there's probably a parallel there. And obviously people aren't God. People are going to be fallible, whereas I can ultimately trust him. But if I'm willing to keep working toward that trust, maybe that's part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's this willingness to say, you hurt me, or I hurt you, which sometimes it's harder to say. Yeah. And yet I still love you. Mm-hmm. I still care for you, and I still want the best for you, which are the things I think we can point to God and say, why can we come back to relationship with him when he disappoints us, or when we disappoint him? Well, we know he wants good things for us. We know he loves us. Those are tenets of that relationship. Right. And so the reason why this process of rupture and then repair builds that trust is because it can feel like I'm going to lose them if I disagree with them. Yeah. And then I don't. And they still love me. And they still want the best for me. Yeah. And they express that even when we are two completely different people. Sure. That builds such trust within that relationship. Yeah. And it really allows us to address things that we can't otherwise outside of a safe relationship.
Yeah, so true. And I referenced, there's obviously a parallel to, on very different ways, very different outcomes, but there's parallel to our relationship with God. And so really then I guess I could ask the flip question of, how does then these journeys that we have with humans and our human relationships, how does that help us grow as a person, or in our relationship with God? What does that look like?
Absolutely. I think this is a key tenet of our growth. Yeah. Both, in our just self-awareness and in our discipleship journey. We hear the scripture, iron sharpens iron, but it is so true. There are some things that, I think of myself. I love to psychoanalyze myself. It's, part of the job, I guess, part of the background. Why did I do that? Why do I do that? What is my intention there? And that can go so far, but there are some things I cannot see because I'm living in my own experience. My own mind makes sense to me. Of course I'm right because it's in my own mind still. And so having relationships where people can offer a different perspective in a safe place. We're not going to get that through somebody commenting on an Instagram picture or even passing someone in the hall. They're not going to be able to make these deep observations about us. I think back to when my husband and I were dating, there were a few times he would make comments about my personality or, who I was. And my reaction would be anywhere from like denial to pretty offended, at some of these of just, how dare you say that? But a couple, times I can remember one of them, he said, you're a creative.
Okay.
I said, no, I'm not. I like going to school and getting graded on tests and things that are in pretty little boxes. I'm not. And so it felt like this, I don't think you really know me because that is not me. Yeah. And then another time there was, he made some comment to the effect of, you kind of act a lot older than your age. And it wasn't a compliment, right? Like, it wasn't like you're a cool old soul or
like, wait a second.
It was like, why are you going places alone all the time? And why do you go to bed at 9 p.m.? Mm-hmm. And so I was pretty offended by that. Like, don't call me old. I think at the time I was 19 or 20 years old.
Yeah, what?
Excuse me. But in both of those instances, because it was in the context of a relationship that was safe, it let me go back and reflect on those things. Mm-hmm. Like, am I really a creative? And if so, why is it so hard for me to admit it?
Oh, wow.
Why is that not something that I want to engage with? Yeah. And up until that point, I had a lot of maybe perfectionist tendencies. And being a creative is hard sometimes to reconcile with being a perfectionist because creativity is subjective and it's vulnerable and not everyone's going to like it. I can't be graded as easily on, these creative things. And so how do I know that I'm succeeding? And then even on the old soul, it's like, why am I alone? Why am I so used to that, being isolated? And it went back to a lot of things in my teenage years and the way that I had come to operate. But in both of those instances, it came to be not necessarily a term of endearment because it's not something we use all the time, but it came to almost feel like, wow, someone noticed me and saw me in my idiosyncrasies and the things that make me unique that maybe aren't normal for every person around me. And yet it was this like pull to be known and seen and a greater understanding of myself than I had before because I was able to do that in the context of a safe place. He wasn't saying, you're a weirdo, I'm out of here.
No.
But he was saying, you're kind of weird. What's that about? And so that ability for someone to say, what's that about? You seem like you're really fanatical about sports or whatever it is. Like, what is that about? And coming to know we all have idiosyncrasies or things that make us unique. And so someone drawing those out and saying, that's actually a really unique part of you. Can you tell me more about that? Can I enter in that world with you? Can you let me see that part of you? That really spurs us to a greater understanding of ourselves. Why am I that way? And letting other people see that can mirror when we let God see those parts of us and realize, oh, maybe I've even been holding that back from God.
Wow.
Because I was so resistant to it or didn't understand it or didn't even see it.
Wow.
So it's really this just illuminating relationship that can show us so much more about ourselves and about others.
Oh, that's so good. You're right. That's not happening just if you were looking at my highlight reel on Instagram.
Right.
There's no way.
Right.
But that willingness to spend time together, build trust, so then to be able to say those things and somebody really see you. And it is amazing how there, if you right now said, okay, I'm going to list your, 5 characteristics of you. I mean, probably we're not going to have, 4 of the 5 probably aren't going to surprise me, but it is interesting, and you would be able to explain professionally why this happens. The blind spots that we have about ourselves, whether that's on some kind of conscious, subconscious, unconscious, whatever that is, that's a thing. And I don't know why that we are that way. It's just part of the humanness of us. I even remember, I thought of this while you were talking. I remember a minister who's passed on now years ago, very, very used in the gifts of the Spirit, had this very powerful ministry that had a huge influence in our movement. And he said he reached a point of frustration because he could not be used in the gifts of the Spirit for himself or his family. And it was really frustrating. He's like, God, you send me all over the world and I will prophesy over this person and you'll give me the word of knowledge and I'll tell this person, you've got this situation, you need to do this. And he's like, my own family. And I feel like I don't understand what's going on. I can't even pray for my own family. And it was just, and God just really had to say, you're so into it. I can't just, you can be using the gifts of the Spirit with other people because it's just to flow through you. You're not personally involved. You're not going to shape that. But then when it comes to yourself and your family, you have all these biases. You have all of this, there's so much personal emotion built up. You can't just be using that same level of gifts of the Spirit in your own family. That's obviously a spiritual parallel, but it works here as well, just in the natural, that I sometimes can't see myself for who I am because I'm just so me, like you said, living in this human experience all the time. So I maybe am not, and maybe I'm just thinking in a fresh way today that you're right. Part of the necessity, we were made to be in relationships with other people. And part of that is even just for ourselves to truly understand who we are. That's going to come out when we're interacting with other people and letting them look at us and see things that we don't see ourselves.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And there's so much evidence for this on different levels. And we could go to kind of the neuroscientific, like how do our brains make order of our thoughts? And there's actually research to show that as we speak them out to other people, we are putting order to our thoughts. It helps us make sense of what we are feeling and thinking, to have a safe place to just process out loud. But on the other end too, we see that biblically, we were made to be in relationship. The body is made to serve each other.
Right.
And so it's not separate and apart from God's creation and his intention for us. He created us to live in relationship. So it makes sense that even the way our brains are designed functions best when we are in deep relationships, when we're able to have safety. And it's even speaks to redemption. There's so much that we experience in life that we can really only heal if we re-experience it with a different outcome. So, if we're really hurt by someone, but then we're in a similar situation with the capacity to be hurt again. And then we're not. We're treated with care and delight. That heals that initial experience. So relationships are even designed to be redemptive for us, to be healing for us, to repair the things that were not in order or not aligned with the way that God intended for them to be. They have this ability to go back and heal and redeem those initial experiences.
Oh, that's beautiful. I hadn't thought about that, but that's how you learn to trust somebody else. That process is so important. And I even thought while you're talking about the word accountability. Now, obviously in this season of mental and emotional health, there are specific issues with addiction where that accountability looks like one thing, it's very specific. But even just the broader, just general idea of accountability, the New Testament talks about provoking one another to love and good works. So accountability sometimes with addiction, again, very specific, and there's a way we use that idea of accountability, but even just in our friendships, our relationships, it is in building a relationship with somebody else that they are going to provide some accountability. They're going to provoke me to good works. And sometimes, I've had friends that have said, you know what, you're called to be a writer. What are you writing? And it's not a point the finger, I'm going to police you. It's not that at all. But it's just when we trust people enough to let them into our lives and our priorities and what's going on, sometimes it's in those relationships that they will do that biblical work of provoking us to good works and helping point us back to our purpose in times where we maybe get off track.
Absolutely. And it can even take the form of someone coming and saying, did you know that you're really gifted in this area? Saying, no, I'm not. Or
Yeah.
I didn't know
You with
that.
that creativity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or, you have this like kind of false humility of like,
Yeah.
me? No.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But it can bring revelation of, maybe I should be using that
Absolutely
for the kingdom. Maybe I could step, even that self-efficacy of, maybe I am capable of stepping into that arena of gifting or of being used in that way. And so provoking to good works can even take on the form of just recognizing goodness or ability or talent within each other. Or being able to follow up, like you said, of like, hey, I know that you are struggling with that relationship with a family member.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just having that space to say, like, here's how I'm struggling and here are the things that are going well. And can you just be that constant care to say, I remembered, I thought of you, and I want to follow up with you and see how you're doing.
Oh, so good. Well, it's a season on mental health, emotional health, and those are broad words and broad topics. But even with what you were just sharing, there's obviously a connection. Maybe let's spend a little time talking about relationships and how, what does that mean in the scope of mental and emotional health?
Absolutely. I think we bring our whole selves into relationship, even the parts of us that we are unaware of or that we haven't processed yet or we haven't thought of. And there are a lot of practical ways we could talk about this, such as, attachment styles, styles of attachment we form in childhood that we bring into adulthood. Like I have learned a template of relationship and I expect people to act in a certain way. And that's the lens I bring into my adulthood. Doesn't mean that it can't be changed. It's not fixed, but that's my starting point. Whereas your starting point may be way over here and you may expect me to act completely opposite, what I'm expecting. So our experiences, our well-being, all of these are factors that we bring into relationship, whether we realize it or not. Yeah. And so they can have such implications. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there have been times I get into a situation and, it kind of strikes a chord with me or whatever. And I walk away and either in that moment or later, I'll think, I felt like I was 8 years old or I felt like I was 15 years old in that moment. And for some reason, that exact situation kind of will take you back to that exact experience you had at an earlier time in your life. And so you may have a reaction or a response in yourself, not because it's happening to my adult self, but because something similar happened to my 8-year-old self. And so my wealth of knowledge, experiences goes with me. It doesn't go away, but I bring that into relationships. And so it really, more than me entering into a relationship with you sitting in front of me, even sometimes more than the way that you're treating me, though all of the previous experiences can frame how I view you, even more than this experience I'm having right now with you. And so we are predisposed to view people in a certain way based on the experiences we've had up until this point. And it's not separate and apart from our new relationships.
Wow. Well, I think we know that, even spiritually, we know that our relationship with our own Father can affect the way we view God as Father and all those kinds of things. So that makes sense then. We're a composite of our past experiences. I guess I would have a follow-up question then, since we're talking about mental and emotional health. If we know that we've experienced, all of us experience all kinds of things, but if we've experienced something that we recognize, this causes me to have trust issues, this causes me to react in certain ways, but yet we want to build relationships with people. How do we balance that? Do we have to, in those moments where we find ourselves reacting and going back to those moments, do we bring that up with the person? Do we say, "Ooh, I just need to work on that"? What does that look like then to still have healthy relationships, even when we know we're carrying some things that affect us, maybe even negatively?
Absolutely. I'll put a shameless plug in for counseling right now.
Yes.
Or just a safe relationship that is not the intimate relationship that you are trying to understand. So something that is apart from the experience that you're having with someone, this kind of third party that can say, like, let me just be here as a fly on the wall to notice you and to be with you as you are trying to process all of these things. There's so much power in having someone who is not emotionally invested in your situation, who's not the other person in this relationship that you are trying to work out and understand, who can say, you know, oh, did you notice that? They did something really good there.
Yeah.
Can we capture that?
That's good.
Because when we have not experienced a secure relationship, we don't yet know what that looks like. So we can spend a lot of time overthinking, is it my fault that I have trust issues, or are they really acting untrustworthy?
Yeah.
And I can't see the difference because I've never experienced trust.
Sure.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
No one has ever been that for me.
Yeah.
So it's almost like needing someone else to help you paint a picture. What does this secure, healthy relationship look like? When is it falling in that box? And when is it's not me, it's you. They really are acting untrustworthy and helping me form this new template of, oh, okay, that was good. Let me remember that and capture it, because we tend to gloss over the good and focus on the bad, or we think, I'm just crazy. I'm never going to be able to trust anyone because I've got trust issues. So we put it all on ourselves, and we kind of self-sabotage to say, this is just never going to work.
Yeah. It's me.
It's me.
Yeah.
I'm destined to have these failed relationships over and over.
Yeah.
No one is destined to have failed relationships over and over. But sometimes we can get in our own way because we aren't recognizing what is a healthy behavior and what's not. And so I think if you are seeing that you are in that process, I know I have trust issues. I know this is a thing. I really want to work through it. I just don't know how. I would be a huge advocate of going to therapy or going and finding a mentor that you can sit with and just say, can I just be honest with you?
Right.
Someone who doesn't have social repercussions for you, which is the whole reason why therapy works, is because it doesn't matter what I say. This person there's no ripple effects if they don't like me or if they do like me, or if they, think I'm doing a good job or they don't. There's no effect of that. So having a third party who can say, let's capture that. That was good. Or, that doesn't sound like it's really serving you. Just be this kind of mirror and reflection back. It can help you build this new template of what can relationships be for me, and what does a healthy, secure relationship even look like? How do I even operate in that? When am I pushing them away? When is this really not a great thing and I should be walking away?
Because that's something we're back to. It's so hard for us to objectively analyze ourselves, our situations, even the people around us. And so you're absolutely right. The value of that counselor to just step in and look without a motive, without an agenda, and just help recognize those things that we just can't pick up on necessarily, or we don't know what to do with when we do pick up on that.
Yes.
That's so good.
Because it's foreign, right? Like, how do I operate in this? I've never done this before. And for the people who have grown up with secure relationships, it feels natural to them. But what feels natural to you is not what you want to replicate. Even though it's familiar, even though you understand it, you get it. You get why people act that way. When you're trying to move from insecure relationships to secure, it is so helpful to have someone you can sit with and process what's going on with. Oh, that's good. I was going to put you on the spot and just say, what are, ways that we can evaluate, our need for a counselor? But I don't know if that's a fair question because every person's situation is different. But maybe just, it sounds like that it's about recognizing, am I in a place of trust and health and safety? And probably it's always helpful to get someone to get involved and just say, hey, from an objective viewpoint, what are some things we can look at to make this an even better relationship? Absolutely. And I think a couple of signs are, I feel stuck.
Okay.
I don't know where to go from here.
Okay.
I want to move from A to B, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
Or even just, I can't even name the problem, but something is not working for me. In some way, I'm full of stress and anxiety, or, I'm not functioning how I want to be functioning. I can't get up and go to work. I can't, do certain things I want to be able to do without having anxiety. There's something not functioning, or I feel like I can't move from where I am to where I want to be.
Right.
And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So I would say that those are some big signs of it would be helpful to just go sit with someone and have their unbiased perspective.
Right.
Or just a place to be truthful with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And to sit in that and have someone just sit with me and let me experience them.
Yeah.
That holds so much healing power and so much perspective changing without even them saying anything. Just being with you and letting you work through and sort through all of those experiences and thoughts can be incredibly helpful.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Because again, we know that God's plan for us as a person, a human he's created, good. He wants good things for us. He wants health and wholeness. And then when we come in relationship with other people, that's a good thing. We're made for that. He wants good, healthy relationships as well. Yes. So whether it's something that is in my past experiences or whether it's a situation I'm dealing with right now, when we reach any of those moments of stuck or need help, I appreciate you saying, don't hesitate to reach out and get some help so that we can be emotionally, mentally whole ourselves, and that in our relationships, we're cultivating good, healthy relationships.
Yes.
So
and
good.
Once you get to the point of some secure relationships, those can fill a lot of those roles for you because it is someone who knows you deeply and can help point you toward Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what those truest forms of relationship in the way that they were designed to be, that's what they do, is they kind of provide this scaffolding for each other to be able to move toward wholeness, to be able to move toward completeness.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. I think everybody out there wants to have meaningful relationships and wants to be mentally and emotionally whole, but for a variety of reasons, we have the field of counseling for reasons. There's things happen, life happens. And I think it's just helpful for us today to think about, how healthy are we? How healthy are the relationships in our lives that we value? And I just really appreciate you today sharing that to help us be on the right track. Maybe I would just ask you to kind of close us out by just any advice to those who are listening today and they're hearing this, and we've covered a lot of territory, but maybe just a way to kind of put in perspective and kind of process what you've shared with us. If you'd like to just maybe sum it up and give us a kind of final direction.
Absolutely. I think the first perspective to walk away with is relationships are important.
Yeah.
And they're worthy of striving for.
Yeah.
They're worthy of being uncomfortable for.
Yeah.
They're worthy of having hard conversations for. They are worth the effort.
Yeah.
When you can make the effort, show up, be there, be with people in both their celebrations and their hardships.
Yeah.
It's worth the effort to do so. And I think breaking that down of just what can I do today to let someone know they're important to me, or express how much they mean to me, or provide an opportunity for connection. Can I go have coffee with someone where the only agenda is just to catch up?
Yeah.
Where it's not to be, entertained by something together, but instead to truly know each other. Yeah. What is something small I can do today?
Very good. Very good. Well, I know this is going to be a great blessing to everyone out there. We believe that God's plan for us is to be whole and to be holy. And that happens when we're in these places that we can be healthy and experience everything that God has for us. Thank you again for coming and taking part and helping us today.
Absolutely.
It's been a great blessing. Thank you all for joining and taking part. We welcome you back for a future episode of the Wholeness Podcast.